Hello, my name is Clayton Bennett. I'm the developer and maintainer for the Dworshak ecosystem, so that includes Dworshak, dworshak-prompt, dworshak-secret, dworshak-config, and dworshak-env. I want to tell you a little bit about where the project came from and what you can do with it now. So I started working on configuration and just different Python solutions in the Pavlov 3D project, and more recently in the pipeline-eds project. Pavlov 3D, because there was complexity and there were different sets of input files and different places for export files to go, and the configuration was fairly complex, I started with a workspace model where you could point at a different workspace, and each workspace had a totally different set of configuration files, import files, export files, stuff of that nature. So in the code, there was a lot of pathing, and then there was like a waterfall process for bringing it all in, and it worked, but I knew it could be better. So my next swing at trying to figure out a standard approach to configuration, I started to use this workspace model that ended up kind of wearing out. So in the pipeline-eds program, I ended up kind of collapsing it down to saying like, well, we can just have people explicitly point at a single configuration file at will, but otherwise they can point to a default configuration file. And if they don't have a hygiene problem, you can just let two key service and item keys and values stack up in the same file, and that's their business. The problem in the pipeline project was you had plain text configuration, and then you also had secrets. Now, one of my key opportunities and goals for the pipeline project was making sure everything ran on Termux on Android. So with secrets, credential management in Python, typically you'll be recommended keyring, but keyring only talks to your operating system keyring. So it works fine on Windows or WSL or Mac OS or GNOME. There's no keyring for Termux. So rather than just accepting a plain text fallback on Termux, I decided to implement a cross-platform solution and implement an encrypted database file that used SQLite 3, which ships with Python, so that it would be inherently useful on Termux without needing to choose a database that might not install neatly on Termux or would add extra dependency overhead. And so then with this, I selected to have a two key service and item, just like you would expect with the keyring. And then there is Vault management. So there's a .key file that's associated with the Vault. You have CRUD operations to get things in and out of there. Great, that all works. It has the expected features. That two key management, we decided to keep that for the config file. And again, there's a default config file that lives in the dworshak folder. And if you want to use a different config file, then by all means. But it was a big deal to us to provide default that was not in your GitHub repository, so that way there was far less risk of you accidentally pushing your credentials up to the public. Even if it's your config values, you probably don't want to be doing that. Even if it's AES encrypted, you probably don't want to be doing that. And then also, it just means that people have to write less code. There's less management. If I don't want to think about it, I just want it to work, good, it's in the default file, don't worry. Great. So we're really excited to have all that working from a scripting perspective, where when you're writing Python code, it says, hey, get my value. And it goes and it gets it. Way less code, way less pathing, way less overhead. One thing that we started to implement in the pipeline project was also what ultimately would become the obtain pattern, which is now the obtain pattern in dworshak-prompt. The obtain pattern basically says you write your code, and at the point that it's used, it's just in time getting. So it'll say get it, but if it can't get it and it's not found where it expects to find it, then the user will be prompted in any way that they can be. So because we were running, building this thing to run on Termux, what that meant was the only place you could reach your users through the web browser. That's the only GUI that you have, unless they're installing Termux GUI from F-Droid. But because this is for my coworkers' work phones, I said, no, I'm only going to have Termux from the Play Store. I can only assume that, which has been approved by our internal IT. Great. My coworkers are allowed to put Termux on their Android phone at work. Super. I don't expect them to be in the console. Maybe console for setup. Just, hey man, here's how you install pipx. Here's how you pipx install pipeline-eds. And then other than that, I want to basically give them an application that runs the same as it does on their computer without my personal overhead of also having to build an Android app. Super stoked to be building stuff on Termux. Yeah, at a certain point you want your core to work and then to also be able to roll out through Kivy or Briefcase or whatever else. But there is a big question about, can you really expect your coworkers to open up Termux and to be able to do what they need to do? For technicians, sure, it's a great question, and you can train your people as long as you're offering them a product and you're saying, hey, this is a console, you can do this, try not to fat finger anything, and then you just have to consider the failure modes. So if you're giving them a lot to type in the console on their phone, that can be challenging. So how are you mitigating that? And getting them into a web browser where you're serving, you start a server through your application, and it, maybe automatically opens their web browser to a new tab that it looks like a web app, but it's serving locally. Great. That's a great solution for running on Termux. And so what I wanted was to be able to write an application where when my users installed it, they would have to fill in configuration so that they could set up their client to run API calls to make sure they're pointing at the client they actually wanted to get data from, and also to put in their credentials. Now, you guys know as developers, usually if you need users to provide configuration, you must expect that and build it into a interface solution. I was less interested in that because you're always having to provide configuration, and it's annoying because as you write your program, your configuration changes. So was there a way that I could make it inherently scalable? It depends what you mean by scalable. In this case, the solution was to scale down and just say every single credential, if it's not found, you write one line of code that says, hey, go get this service and item value. And if you find it in the config file, good, use it. Or if you find it in the secure location, use it. And if you don't find it, prompt the user. Find a way to ask them. And you could set it up where, sure, if you could tell the person is using from console, if a console is available, by all means, ask them in the console. If a console is not available, then start a server, ask them in the web app. And then if there's some weird chance, you may as well do tk-enter for free. If you're writing in Python, tk-enter's there, it comes with standard library, so you may as well say, sure. If the person's running on a machine and tk-enter is available, then by all means, pop-up window, ask them their question there. Great, so now we have a multiplexer. And then I thought, gee, this is a lot of code that really has nothing to do with pipeline-eds. Pipeline-eds is a client for me to make API calls that's specific to my wastewater treatment plant. Why do I have all this heavy multiplexer pathing configuration code that's just for this project? Let me generalize that and have a scripting solution so that people can call their credentials in from the code securely. Because I think there's a lot of temptation. I've seen this. My brother, he works for a large corporation. They write code. He was showing me some of his code that a coworker wrote, and boom, secrets in the code, in the code base. Now for me, I write open source code. That's a big no-no. I'm not going to do that. But for people who don't write open source code, they might think, oh, it's private, it's fine. I'm going to put my credentials in my code base. Who cares? Well, it's bad hygiene, number one. And number two, it's just like you don't know, like that code base, you want it to be inherently scalable as much as possible. And so if you could just as easily write one line of code that said, hey, let me reference where I'm getting my credential from securely, instead of that one line of code that says, here's my credential, it's still one line of code. You may as well do it the right way. And so now with dworshak, dworshak-secret get, you can say, hey, I know it's there, get it. Or with the dworshak-obtain.secret, you can say, hey, I actually don't know if it exists or not. If it does, good. We had to set it up once. Now it'll work every time. If it doesn't, we're going to get it. Launch the multiplexer. Find me a user. Ask them the question. They'll put it in, and then boom, now we know. It's like playing Pokemon on Game Boy. You know, first time, what's your name? Asks you your name, boom, it remembers it the rest of the game. So this is appropriate for just-in-time, one-time configuration. If you're going to be asking the same questions over and over again, it's fine if you don't want to write an interface, but at a certain point, it's a stopgap measure. Like, it's really good for developing code quickly, where you're saying, you know, I don't really want to worry about config. I don't want to worry about interfacing, asking all these questions to my user. I just want them to get asked and have the opportunity to put things in an inherently stable cross-platform way where things are being stored, you know, in a stable way for the project. And then at a certain point, you might say, okay, I've kind of outgrown Dworshak and I want to write my own configuration panel. Do it. Write your own interface. You don't need to use dworshak-prompt. At that point, if you are only getting the configuration values and you know the path that they're at, you can use dworshak-config.get. And if for some reason the credential is missing, it'll say, hey, it's missing, and it'll stop there, and then you'll know. But if you don't even want to worry about that at all, use the dworshak-obtain pattern. Something else I want to talk about is value management from the command line. So there's the dworshak CLI, which is actually an aggregation of the CLIs from dworshak-prompt, dworshak-config, dworshak-secret, and dworshak-env. So they each have their own that at least have get, set, list, and remove operations. There's a path argument. There's a message argument. So with that, the command line can be thought of as the place for you to investigate and add credentials or values without having to put those values into your code itself. You can use set operations when scripting in your code. I would highly recommend not using that as the place to especially set your secure credentials in your code base. Like, sure, you could open your REPL and you can effectively use that as almost the way that you would a console to enter the value once and then now it's stored securely. I don't know if I would add the secret to your code at any time. So then the question becomes, how do I put in my secret without even including my console log? So if you want to use dworshak-secret set, and you put your service and then your item key. If you don't, you could go ahead and type in the value itself all in one line. If you don't do that, you will then be prompted for the value, and the value will be hidden. And you can type it in, and it will never enter your console log. That's pretty good. The problem there is you don't have a show hide feature in the console, so it's really easy to type in your value wrong. So this is where your multiplexer comes in. You can specify that you want to use a web interface or a GUI interface, that you want to avoid the console, and then you'll get it in the pop-up window, TK enter, or a web server will start, and you'll see in the small web app. And those have a show hide feature, so now you can read it while you type it if you choose, or it can be hidden, and it never enters your console. That's the most secure way to add a secret. and then you can manage that. Now, the cool thing about what you can do in the console is we've also tried to have good hygiene with standard air and standard out, stout and stare, where you can pipe your value from your dworshak-management, or you can capture it for environmental variable assignment, so that now you can use it for bash scripting. So that's pretty cool. So now it's not just a Python scripting tool. Now it's not just a way that you can manage your credentials with a CLI for your Python scripting. Now it is a operating system environmental value tool. So you can retrieve values from your dworshak vault or various vaults or your various configuration files, and you can use them at the operating system level with other programs. You can also leverage the dworshak obtain pattern at the operating system level now, so you can do, setup scripts where if you're running something on a machine for the first time and you want some environmental variables to be known to the machine, it can now leverage the multiplexer to find the user and ask them, hey, what value do you want to store? And it'll store it in a place that's now accessible to the machine. And every time that script runs again, it'll be able to use the obtain pattern to say, hey, I already know that. I don't need to prompt it again. Now we just use that value. So very excited to have that hygiene on the standard out versus standard air differentiation, so that now, it's beyond just being a Python tool. We hope to be able to impact to bring the obtain pattern to your living room. Well, this is a bit of information. I'm sure some code examples would be useful, but all in good time. Right now I'm just trying to generate more documentation to help make the project useful and findable and discoverable to people so that they can leverage it. I've worked pretty hard on it for about 2 months now, just building it out, making sure that it does what I want it to do. It's been a lot of fun. Now I have to go work on pipeline, and it does what it already did, but now I get to remove a lot of dead code where a lot of what was in the code base now gets to be offloaded, and it just calls in the dworshak stuff. So it's really strange to put a product down sometimes, and there's a lot of tendency to want to keep maintaining and keep building. Of course, maintenance is necessary, but I'd also like to build up the docs enough and to build up a test suite that's stable so that it is, could hypothetically be out of my hands. Someone else could maintain it. I don't have to touch it anymore. That's a great goal, to get it to a spot where it's easy to understand, easy, clear intent, clear maintenance goals, understandings of, what we might want to build in the future, which would include a GUI. Just GUI management of credential values so that you don't even have to do it in the console if you don't want to. So then you can just have Python scripting and GUI values, or heck, even just GUI. If you want a local solution for storing your credentials, do it. I mean, there's 1Password. We don't have a synchronization right now cross-machine. We certainly don't have backup to web. I have no intent to give you a username and password that's associated with your email address. But if someone else wants to fork dworshak to do that, then by all means. I think that might be outside of the scope of the project, but if you're that serious of a Python dev, and you see it as a great opportunity for the Python scripting aspect, by all means. It's an open source project. It's yours. Do whatever you want with it. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.